death for a cigarette. The name Eric Garner is now enshrined in a grim annal of history. It joins Mike Brown, Ramarley Graham, Alan Bluford, Dontre Hamilton, and thousands of others who were murdered by those their taxes helped pay for, cops. In many ways, Garner's case is even more egregious than Brown's, for it was videotaped, and one sees his takedown, his incessant choking, his unconsciousness, and shortly thereafter, his death. Now the words, "I can't breathe," have become joined with the cry, "Hands up," reminders of the Garner and Brown killings at the hands of police. Both cases are also noted for the behavior of grand juries, which now appear reckless beyond belief in their inability to return indictments against cops. The grand jury immigrated here from England, where, as it was then called, Grand Assizes, a body of about a dozen knights under the direction of a baron or some other noble, would investigate cases and charge people. Later, they became tools of the king. Today, they are instruments of the prosecutors, and used, just as under kings, to target whom they wish and to clear whom they wish. Outrage stems from the long history of its use to protect cops, yes, even killer cops. This, while the nation is really awash in mass incarceration, the majority of whom have never had a grand jury indictment, unlike the average cop. The system is constructed to protect cops, no matter how outrageous their behavior. That's just a fact. And as the nation now celebrates historic events from the civil rights movement of half a century ago, the grim and ugly present of black life and black death in America makes that glowing history feel hollow indeed. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. Unsaid at Selma. Who can question whether President Barack Obama is a master when it comes to speeches? Such a quality literally put him on the map when he mesmerized a crowd at the 2004 Democratic National Convention. He did it again in Selma, Alabama's 50th anniversary at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. His central message, no one can doubt that things are better since Selma. No one. His speech, delivered with quiet passion, was a masterwork. And yet, Selma has become sacred in civil rights history, not because of what happened there, but because of what happened thereafter. Public outrage fueled the passage of the Voter Rights Act, the same law recently trimmed by the U.S. Supreme Court. Selma is a vivid example of an evil that still lives with us, that of police immunity for their violence. At Selma, Alabama state troopers and so-called posse men beat people unconscious. They shattered skulls, broke ribs, knocked out teeth, and broke bones. Guess how many of them went to jail? None. Just 4 years after Selma, Chicago cops broke into the apartment of Black Panther leader Fred Hampton and killed him in his sleep. They also killed Captain Mark Clark. Guess how many cops went to jail? 0. Zip to our present and the Mike Brown case. No criminal trial, state or federal. Too hard, say federal prosecutors. On May 13th, 1985, cops dropped bombs from a helicopter and shoot and burn 11 men, women, and children to death, and also destroy several city blocks. In that case, 20 years after Selma, how many cops went to jail? You know, none. Obama could have addressed police immunity, but that would have shattered his "we're all better" speech. What radicalized and motivated Ferguson was a long train of police impunity and immunity after violence against the community. They had seen it too many times. So Selma is closer than we think. It continues to trouble us today. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. The not-so-grand jury. In Ferguson, tensions are tighter than a drum, in morbid anticipation of the decision of the grand jury in the fatal police shooting of Mike Brown, a local black teenager. We have said the decision of the grand jury. But in truth, it isn't the grand jury which really decides anything. It's the prosecutor. As the saying goes, a prosecutor can use a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich if he wants to. Unless I miss my guess, he doesn't want to. It goes against too much grain. Most people never see a grand jury. They're traditionally done in secret, although the Ferguson grand jury has more holes than a tennis net. It has leaked lakes of information, seemingly to set the stage for a vote of no indictment, no true bill. Years ago in Philadelphia, a grand jury was empaneled to decide on whether cops who dropped a bomb on a house killing 11 men, women, and children, the Move House, burning several blocks down to the ground, should be charged with anything. Months and months passed, and one day, the announcement came. No true bill, no charges. The DA who ran the show would years later become the Chief Justice of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, retiring Judge Ron Castile. Because a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich if it wants to. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. Ferguson's fallout. Protests in over 170 cities. Demonstrations during dozens of Black Friday sales with demands to not spend Black America's money on mindless materialism while millions mourn. The police killing of teenaged Mike Brown and the subsequent whitewash by a prosecutor's state grand jury has touched a raw nerve among young Black America. The question is, what next? Already, media and government are trying to manage this event by its calls for closure, and hence that relief may lie with federal officials. Most know that these are but pipe dreams, soft words meant to ease back into a deadly status quo of business as usual. But any system that kills children is a system that can't be allowed to exist. With tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in a state of outrage, now is the time to organize them into organizations designed and committed to fight for deep structural social change. The system that allows its agents to kill children with utter impunity must be shattered, and new humanistic structures, ones controlled by the people, must be erected in its place. This energy, this moment, must not be allowed to dissipate. It must be seized. It must be harnessed. It must be used to build new ways of being in the world. This will take will. It will take vision. But most of all, it'll take commitment to fight and struggle until social change becomes a reality. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. Why we can't breathe. The demands and voices of protest are raised across America. Voices of men and women, of children even. Voices of rage. Voices of hope. Voices of deep mass discontent. These voices, as anguished as they are insistent, are voices of a generation that has been largely silent in the public square. Only through their poets and rappers have their voices been heard. But even then, commercial interest intruded, changing righteous rage into clever rhymes. Art, not imitating life, but sending it down a street it had not intended. Now, an awful truth emerges. Out of the sweet mouths of the youth, we can't breathe, they shout. The we is instructive, for it reveals the collective consciousness emerging. We can't breathe. Why not? Because in the richest country on earth, poverty pitches pennies on the street corner, hoping against hope to hit. Because a simple education is beyond the ability of the neoliberal state to provide. Because today's school is tomorrow's prison, and a place where hatred and humiliation lives, not knowledge, not education, under the ridiculous rubric of no child left behind. Because for too many children, childhood is but an illusion, as it was for Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old boy doing what boys have been doing for over a century. Playing with a toy gun becomes a death sentence. Because every hand and every face is turned against them, as futures are as bleak as lunar landscapes. We can't breathe, they howl, but we can't hear them. The neoliberal state is too busy choking them to death. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. Ferguson, USA. With breathless news reports, the U.S. Department of Justice's Pattern and Practice Study paints a damning picture of a long, cruel, and bitter train of maltreatment, mass profiling, police targeting, and brutality against black people in the Missouri town of Ferguson. What may be even worse, however, is how the town's police, judges, and political leaders have conspired to loot the community by fining them into more poverty. Fines which today account for some 25% of the county's budget. Correctly, cops have been criticized for their juvenile emails and texts of racism and contempt against the local black community and even black leaders in Washington, D.C. There is largely silence, however, over the role of judges who use their robes to squeeze money from the community with unfair fines and fees, even using their jails as an illegal kind of debtor's prison. In 1869, during the reign of England's Queen Victoria, a statute known as the Debtors Act was passed, which forever abolished imprisonment as punishment for debt. In today's Missouri, it's still used to punish the poor. But truth be told, it ain't just Missouri. Famed Rolling Stone writer Matt Taibbi, in his 2014 book, The Divide, tells a similar tale, but from points all across America: Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, Gainesville, Georgia, L.A., San Diego, and beyond. Poor people are being squeezed and squeezed by cops, by judges, by local governments to part with their last dime to support a system that's corrupt to the core. Taibbi's full title might give us better insight. The Divide: American Injustice in the Age of the Wealth Gap. It's the system, one of exploitation, of predation, ultimately of capitalism. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. 137 shots. A man drives his companion down a Cleveland street, and before he knows it, police sirens bite into the night air, sending a chill down his spine. He pushes his foot down on the accelerator, trying to avoid this madness. Little does he know that within minutes, he and his companion will be shown their last vision in life: 137 shots fired into them, courtesy Cleveland police. This happened in 2012. On Saturday, a judge there acquitted a cop involved in that shooting for leaping atop the car's hood and emptying his semi-automatic 15 shots into the bullet-ridden bodies of the two occupants of the car. 137 shots into a car of unarmed people, said to be sparked by a car's backfire. Legal, justifiable. The two had traces of drugs in their system, the judge noted. They were thus expendable. 137 shots. It's okay. No biggie. Boys will be boys, right? The law is naught but opinion, whether a judge's or anyone else for that matter. In the season of Ferguson, when youth are in the streets yelling Black Lives Matter, we learn that this is more aspiration than reality. It is a bitter hope in the cold kingdom of the law. For today, black lives don't matter a bit. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. Justifiable. After the roaring summer of 2014, of angry youth protests that shook over 200 cities on the issue of cop violence and impunity in the use of state violence, it's worth our while to look this situation in its face. The cops do what cops do because a machinery of protection and whitewashing exists around them. From politicians to politician-controlled grand juries, which do the whitewash and cover-up work. We all know the case of Fred Hampton, the eloquent, brilliant young leader of the Black Panthers in Chicago, shot in bed, in the head, after having been drugged by his own man, a rat for the feds. Did you know a Chicago grand jury labeled his murder justifiable homicide? In other words, killing a sleeping man is cool? I may have known it when I was a teenager. I may have forgotten it. But reading a few days ago the book Up Against the Wall, Violence in the Making and Unmaking of the Black Panther Party by scholar Curtis J. Austin reminded me, justifiable homicide. Justifiable homicide. Think of that when you think of Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, or even yourself. But think about it today. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. Of punks, predators, and pigs. A South Carolina cop, Michael Slager, opens up on an unarmed black man, Walter Scott. 8 times he shoots. The 50-year-old man drops like a stone in the sea and drifts into eternity. Scott, a former officer of the U.S. Coast Guard and father of 4, had initially been stopped for a busted traffic light. The cop wrote a detailed report saying he was attacked by Scott, who tried to steal his taser. And then the video appeared, and everything changed. Well, almost everything. Slager's been busted. That's rare. But remember the young man who allegedly shot, not killed, 2 cops in Ferguson several weeks ago? Every politician in America leaped at the chance to call the kid a punk, a thug. Now, what do you call Slager? What have you heard? Even though he's been fired, he's called officer today, or Mr. Slager. He killed a man for a traffic citation and lied about it. Is he a punk, a predator, or what Huey P. Newton used to call a pig? From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.